It's time for another edition of Dome and Domer.
Hello again, Irish fans. Welcome back to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame sports podcast on the planet. I'm your host, Mike Sullivan, Notre Dame class of 1990. Joining me today, Mike Brammer, classmate from Dillon Hall, Ed Jordanic, another Dillon Hall guy from the class of 89, and Mike Coffey, class of 91. And Mike is one of the administrators of ND Nation, one of the top Notre Dame fan sites. So we're going to talk a little bit about Marcus Freeman's press conference yesterday as the team prepares for the big matchup with A&M Saturday under the lights. And Mike, I want to start with you. And, we've all been stewing over the loss for the last 10 days or so. Just briefly, give us a sense of the mood of the posters on ND Nation and generally the Notre Dame fan base as you experience it in your role with ND Nation.
Well, I can probably speak definitively to how the ND Nation folks are going. I would probably describe it as, on the good side of things, Marcus Freeman has set a good expectation bar. And for once, it's a bar that is kind of matched up with the way a lot of alums, especially alums of our vintage, have seen the program operate. I like the fact that he's put a lie to the idea that Notre Dame can achieve at the high levels. They wouldn't be able to get far in the playoffs. Well, yes, they can, provided that you have the right mix of coaching, playing, and game planning, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, the effort against Miami didn't necessarily match up with that level of expectation. I think people were concerned about the lack of aggression on defense and a kind of uneven performance on the offensive line. I think, having thought about it myself and been in a number of discussions with people, not only on the site, but also off, I was willing to, look at, put my rose-colored glasses on, knowing you lose a coordinator, you lose what someone on our site called the spine of our defense, of excellent defensive linemen, linebackers, and probably one of the best safeties in the country, especially based on what we saw in his performance on the NFL this weekend. But that's a lot to replace. And I know that Ash said he was going to try to keep things as similar as possible. Well, the entire formula of performance depends on not only who's playing, how they're schemed, where they're put. And a step backwards is probably, in my mind, is probably inevitable, only because you're trying to replace a lot. Now, by the end of the season, they may be humming on all cylinders and everything may look a lot better. Right now, against a top 5 team on the road, it's easy to see how things could fall apart a little bit. But having said all that, I think there's enough folks that have said, okay, that's a data point. Let's see what happens in the next game, especially given a week off in between to figure out what the problem is and get everything resituated.
Okay. Yeah. I hope that some of the inclination to overreact in the media, the fan base, maybe is dying down a little bit. I think there's been a lot of overreaction. You started by saying the effort didn't match the expectations. I'll push back a little bit there. I'm not ready to go and say, hey, there wasn't effort by, the team. I think, as we've talked about, tough environment, tough opponent, and overall, the results didn't match the expectation. I'm not sure I'm comfortable saying the effort didn't match.
Yeah, effort was probably a poor choice of words on my part. I would say, the result, performance, something like that. Obviously the team was into the game, as typical with Marcus Freeman teams. They don't show up like blinded by the lights and scared to death like some of the teams his predecessors put on the field. So, yeah, I would say, while they made a game of it, I would have liked to see just maybe a little more carryover from last year than I did.
So that's an interesting point. Freeman's press conference, let's move into that. A couple themes in there that I'll throw to you guys to bat around a little bit. One was, his opening comments, I think, talked a little bit about that overreaction and the noise outside the building. He referenced outside the building, hey, okay, we're being evaluated on wins and losses, and I get that. But inside the building, inside the program, I think he seemed to be saying, we're going to block out the noise, whether we win or lose, and we're going to focus on our process, which is about achieving our fullest potential, right? Getting everybody up to that where they're playing at their fullest potential. And it's process, not results, that I hear him talking about in his opening comments in the press conference. Okay, so another theme that I think developed was it was an off week, right? So open date this past Saturday changes a little bit how you spend that time when you don't have a game on Saturday, especially early in the year. Ed Jordanek, what are your thoughts on how the off week can be an advantage, or do you think it might be an advantage for Texas A&M, who's got 2 games under their belt? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, like a lot of these things, it cuts both ways. I mean, I think early in the year, you just want to play. And I think when you lose a game and you play the next week, I think nobody would have benefited from, for lack of a better word, a cupcake this past Saturday. Just to sort of get their mojo back, get used to the home environment, work out some kinks, maybe open the playbook a little bit wider because the downside risk was lower. So I think it's situational, but I think in this season, in this particular thing, this is just, especially at the quarterback position, you just got to play games. You just got to get out there and gain that experience. On the other hand, I would think that I would love to see sort of, if there are mistakes this Saturday night, I'd just prefer them to be mistakes of aggression. It seemed like that the sort of the mistakes or the shortcomings that's this past Saturday were because the defense was a little reactive, or because the tackling was a little bit off, or some of the timing was a little bit off on offense. They were sort of more mistakes of passivity than aggression. So I'd rather see, so I mean, for instance, the big play that changed the game, right? I would have rather seen Adon Schuler, get called for pass interference on the circus catch than, not go for the ball, or not make contact and knock it away. I mean, it was an amazing play, right? But it was so I think it cuts.
Yeah, I disagree with you there, Eddie. I think it is such a split-second play. I'm not sure there's any critique to be made. I think if he makes contact,
there absolutely is.
I disagree. I think he's tracking that ball. I know they talked about Freeman talked about high pointing the ball. We got to do a better job, but that looks to me like splitting hairs. That's a 1 in a million catch, and Schuler's tracking on the ball. And if he hits the guy, is he going to get called for targeting? I just don't know about that. That's such a bang play.
If you're a strong safety and you play the game worried about getting called for targeting or worried about pass interference, you're just not going to last very long. Your mistakes have to be mistakes of aggression, because your job is to play center field and to play downhill when you're supporting the run. So I don't buy that at all. I think that he makes that play last year. For some reason, he froze, maybe because it's the first game, maybe because it was, whatever, but that was a pivotal play. And yeah, you can give him a break if you want, but I'm saying that those games are decided by, I think Mike Coffey said it when we talked after the game, they made plays at critical moments and we didn't, right?
I agree they did. I'm just simply saying
that was a play to be made. Anyway,
I simply am saying, I don't think that kid's amazing catch means that our kid did something wrong. That's all I'm saying. So now you talked about a couple things that Freeman also brought up in the press conference, opening up the playbook for CJ Carr a little bit. Mike Brammer, what do you want to see out of CJ Carr this week?
Actually, I was going to comment that I thought I was listening to the Ed Jordanek vindication show when I watched the press conference. Freeman did reference exactly what Ed said on the last show, which is Carr got a little bit aggressive with his RPO reads in terms of throwing the football instead of handing it off. And what he alluded to was not specifically the RPO reads that are obvious, because there are ones where if there's 8 guys in the box, you know what exactly to do. It's the ones that are gray. It's the gray area. And it was pretty obvious that he was throwing the football, especially on that 2nd and 2. And what Freeman alluded to was we got to do a better job of maybe telling him, hey, when it's gray, hand the ball off when it's 2nd and 2. So, some better decisions like that, I think I'd like to see. I would like to see him air it out at least once or twice, just throw a deep ball. I'll never forget the story of Lou Holtz against Michigan with Rocket Ismail, where they just sent him down the sideline and he just told him, I want you to run as fast as you can and go by the sideline so the Michigan players understand what kind of speed they're dealing with. I think you got to throw the deep ball just to show the threat of, hey, this is not what you're used to seeing with Notre Dame quarterbacks, at least as of late. Carr has the ability to throw it deep, and I think we got to at least lay one out there in the first half just to give that, get the guys to back up a little bit.
Well, I'd like to see that too. Freeman, I think, commented on this to a certain extent. The running game has to get going so that we can take those shots, because those shots are going to be best off of, a successful running game and some play action, right? And so I would love to see that in a run situation or a first down and not on 3rd and 12. You know what I mean? So right. I'm with you. And I do expect us to be a little more vertical in the passing game at home in game 2 than we saw in the Miami game.
Who do we consider, just real quick, who do we consider to be the receiver sort of most capable of taking the top off a defense? I'm not really sure who that is on this team, just in terms of, a speed.
Is it Greathouse? Is it?
Let's try it at least.
Yeah, we don't really have a speed burner out there. A guy running a 4-4,
Faison,
4-3.
maybe.
Maybe Faison. Yeah, maybe
Faison. How fast is the transfer from Wisconsin? Is it Will Pauling? I think
he's considered a possession receiver. Yeah.
Is he? Okay. Yeah. So I would think it's Faison or Greathouse are the guys that you're going to, try to get vertical with. And then probably some jump ball type things with Malachi Fields, I would guess, right? But, okay, back to the open date issue. Freeman talked about the how we tried to use this open date early in the year, which is maybe different from how they'll use the open date later in the year. And that is more good on good matchups at practice, more competitive situations at practice. And I think all that's about starting faster and being more physical, as we talked about. He wants to see the offensive line get downhill more and, getting better with the tackling. So it seems like they used last week to address some of those areas where, obviously we didn't play at the standard that we've now come to expect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think you're right. Part of what Freeman also talked about, and back to Coffey's point initially, not so much effort, but velocity is what he kept talking about. And velocity comes from, one, understanding your reads comfortably before the play is called. I know there was a lot of criticism given to Van Gorder that he just had way too many options. Guys were almost, uncertain before the ball snapped, and that reduces your velocity because you don't have the confidence of, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to attack it with velocity. I think that probably was dead on. Maybe we were a little bit, concerned with that in terms of our reads. I'd like to see that come out right from the get-go, because right away, what you can't afford is to get down 3 points, because all of that doubt comes from the game that you just lost. And that's 2 weeks ago. And that's going to play with your head a little bit if we get down.
I don't think 3 points is going to get us rattled, Bram. I mean, you think we're down 3-0?
I just don't want to see us get behind in that regard, because that's what affects that psyche. If you can get up early, have that first score, then that velocity kicks in and your confidence level just skyrockets. That's what I'm hoping for, but we'll see, obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Velocity, playing faster, however, getting downhill, however you want to say it, right? We have to be, more aggressive. And he talked about, he didn't think there was confusion or guys that didn't know what they were doing. He didn't think that was an issue. Now, again, whether or not he would share that directly in the press conference, I don't know, but that's what he said. Playing faster was more about being intentional, more about kind of that focus and intensity that we're going to need to bring right out of the gate. So
no, definitely. But I think there's a difference between playing like you don't know what you're doing and playing where there's an extra half to 3/4 of a second when you have to react to, okay, this is the play. What is my assignment? And it's natural with a new defensive coordinator, no matter how much he's going to try to keep things consistent from the old one, there's going to be some new terminology. There's going to be new focuses. There's going to be new preferences. And what you did last year, or what you spent the last 3 years doing, maybe differs just enough that, again, you're not confused. You know what you have to do, but it may take you like an extra 3/4 of a second to get there. And when we're talking about velocity and stuff like that, that 3/4 of a second can make a really big difference sometimes.
And I think that's, again, don't know if it's a question of terminology. What I understood is that terminology wasn't changing. Ash was adapting to, Notre Dame's terminology. I don't know. But Mike Coffey, you did point out that, yeah, you do have some different bodies in there. And, that's whatever caused that slight hesitation or whatever, that could be the difference between a turnover or not. And obviously that's got to be a point of emphasis. I think we led the nation in takeaways last year and didn't get any last week. So I think there was a lot of focus on that, according to Freeman, over the last 2 weeks. And, that's how you create turnovers, playing fast, playing downhill, playing loose. And hopefully we see that. He even commented on guys that did play with that velocity, maybe weren't even technically perfect, but they made up for it with a little bit of that speed. And so
I love it.
let's hope we see that.
I love it when, like, 3 minutes later, Mike Sullivan makes my Don Schuler point for me.
Eddie, I just don't think that's the play. I mean, I have no reason to think Don Shore hesitated. It was such a bang play, 1 in a million. I just think going back and saying, "Oh, he did that wrong," to me that's BS. I think that was a miracle catch. Not every play has a correctable thing to it. Sometimes guys make plays. That's football.
No, I don't think it's correctable. I think what Ed's saying is that he didn't go attack the ball at the highest point that you can get to it, right? That's the beauty.
Correctable then.
That is correctable, but the beauty of a free safety is a guy that can see the ball coming and knows exactly where the apex is, where he can get to it, because that's what you do. You go to the ball at its highest point, just like a wide receiver does. That's not what he did. He went to play back and catch it in center field on his way back, not going to the point of the ball. So, yeah, you could make the argument that it's not that it's a bad effort or anything like that. I just don't think he saw the guy. I don't think he saw the guy coming at all. And I don't think he thought that guy was going to be anywhere near the football. And all of a sudden he makes a great one-handed grab.
Yeah, you might be right. And again, it's because it's a bang play and not everything is controllable. Right. And so that's all. I mean, huge play in the game. We all agree. And it's this close to going the other way. Okay, let's talk a little bit, just an observation of how good Freeman is in that environment in the press conference, and how much he's grown over the last couple of years. I don't know if you guys heard this. I thought there was a little bit of a gotcha question about the SEC and playing an SEC team that, we'll have 2 in a row and we've won 3 in a row against them and all that. And I just love the way he deflected that question and didn't answer about the SEC, but rather back to the opponent. The focus is on the opponent. And then he segued back into our preparation, our team. And it just said to me how locked in he is on what's important. I don't know if you guys caught that or had any observation of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's savvy.
He's just that much smarter than James Franklin, right? That's what,
Low bar.
Yeah.
But it does kind of belie his experience or lack thereof. Not someone going into his 4th year as a head coach as an experience, but he's brought that calm, focused demeanor to press interactions, almost basically from the first day, and that can go a really long way in. I mean, I don't want to say that being chummy with the press helps you keep your job, but if you don't have guys who are even subconsciously working against you, that can only help. So I think maintaining a good relationship with the fourth estate can be of a benefit to any coach. I think Micah Shrewsbury's maybe seeing a little bit of the opposite side of that. So to the extent that keeping an even keel when doing your press interactions is important. I mean, Freeman's got that just down cold.
I think the biggest
he does,
benefit
and beyond that, Mike, I'm I guess impressed more by how he is on message all the time, and that's, I think, important. I think it reflects what he's doing with the team, which is to be on message, reinforce the things that our culture is about, and he doesn't stray from that. And I think that carries over to the team and the leaders and the coaches as well. I think he sets the agenda and the vision, and he's so consistent with it.
I think
Eddie, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think it's a very subtle example of him being a player's coach. I think that he understands distractions. He understands distractions that these young men have. He understands distractions from classmates, from other students, from girlfriends, from family members. And when there's some little incident in a press conference, and we saw a fair amount of those during the Kelly years, whether it was he got bent out of shape about something or whatever, that becomes the story of the day, right? Nobody woke up yesterday, read the paper, whatever, and read about anything other than the relatively benign comments that you would expect a head coach to make heading into a big game after a first game loss. They all made a lot of sense, but they were sober. They weren't controversial, but at the same time, they were substantive, right? It's not like he goes up there and BSs. There were substance to them. I think what he understands is that he wants his players locked in. And so he operates from that principle with just about everything that he does. And this is just another example of that. His players aren't going back to the dorms or aren't going out, last night having to answer questions about, why did Marcus throw so-and-so under the bus? Or why did it sound like, Marcus, has it out for Minchie, or, none of that nonsense. And so I just think it's an example of that.
Well,
Crash
yeah,
Davis
absolutely.
Crash
He's
Davis would be
in.
very proud because Marcus Freeman has learned his cliches. So,
well, he is locked in. And if you like the content on Dome and Domer, if you enjoyed this conversation, we want you locked in as well. Make sure to like and subscribe, and join us again on Thursday as we preview the matchup, make some predictions for the critical game against Texas A&M. Until then, for Mike Brammer, Mike Coffey, and Ed Jordanek, I'm Mike Sullivan. We'll see you next time on Dome and Domer.